Sure, we're now streaming live. Hello, I'm John from Broadsheet, and you're very welcome to Tomorrow Tonight. We're joined by Councillor Dan Boyle. Good evening, Dan.
Hello, John.
Dan is a councillor on Cork City Council and a Broadsheet columnist. And 1 second, just doing my multitasking here, Dan. Dan, you weren't well. Are you okay? You're okay now, though. You're on the mend.
Hi. It's normal sets of sniffles that you think are all sorts of other things, but fine now.
Good. And tell me about the tree felling on the Cork Greenway. This is the road. They're widening the road to Passage West, isn't it?
Yeah, the road of good intentions, as I say. It's an intent. It's an old railway line, and they want to expand it from its current 3 meters to 5 meters. And to do so, they're removing trees and vegetations a meter on either side, but they've managed to do so far beyond that, and it's got a very scorched earth appearance at the moment, and a lot of people who use the walkway are quite shocked at the work that's been done. It's done by consultants at the bidding of the council on the basis of a contract, but I think it's been very badly handled, and it's.
What were you expecting in terms of tree felling?
Well, I thought it would be done with a lot more sensitivity, you know, yes. And I think part of the problem is that we have an over-engineered approach to these things anyway. That once you use the landscaping equipment, the JCBs and the like, the intent is to do things quickly and to hang the consequences almost, whereas. Very often, if you're talking about protecting a kind of a biodiversity space, we should be almost like archaeologists, you know, it should be hands and shovels for doing a lot of this work.
Yeah, this, I just want to share a photograph from scenes at the marina. Is that, can you see that now?
The marina is, that's where the walkway ends up. It goes all the way there, from there to Passage, which is about 5 or 6 miles away.
When you say sensitivity, Dan, do you mean in terms of they should have done this a bit more discreetly, or?
Well, I mean, in terms of there's 2 things that are happening. Well, obviously they're widening the pathway, but they're removing trees and they're removing vegetation. And the vegetation, even though the trees are more visual, the vegetation is probably worse because its effect on biodiversity is a lot worse again. Because the fact is that, you know, insect life, that's what attracts bird life, and
yes.
The living space is compromised by the way the work has been done, and it'll take a long time to recover, even with new planting.
Yeah, as Dr. Owen Lettice writes, the
Lettice, actually. Yeah.
I beg your pardon?
Owen Lettice, actually.
Lettice, I beg your pardon. The creation of a greenway by destroying habitats and biodiversity, it seems a little bit kind of backwards. They're appointing a tree officer, though, which you
we got money in the estimates to appoint someone, but I suppose it's one of the COVID effects that it's hard to recruit virtually these days, you know, and if you're talking about people that you're looking for a specific skill set, I suppose you'd like to see some practical application of those skills as well. So it's been slow to a point. I mean, the money's been there since the 1st of January, but they haven't advertised yet. It's gone through all the paperwork apparently in the personnel department, human resources.
Yeah.
But it's probably going to be another 2 months again before someone is actually appointed.
Just tree felling generally, like in the last few years, we've even talked about it.
Yeah.
The amount of tree felling has been going on. What is that about, Dan?
Well, part of it is there's an old attitude there that if you talk to officials in local authorities, they would say that they get bigger demands from public representatives and members of the public to cut trees and to prune them and things like that, that they believe that there isn't a public affection for trees or an understanding of their importance and things like that. I think that has changed and it is changing. But there's also the way that they go about it. There isn't necessarily an expertise within each local authority. Work is handed out to contractors. Contractors have additional incentives not to do the work. I mean, they're called tree surgeons a lot of the time, but they're not.
Yeah.
They're not operating surgically. And in fact, they see the opportunity of taking as much trees down as they can, because one of the side benefits of these contracts is to get to keep the wood and use it for other purposes. So,
right. Okay.
so there's no real incentive to do the work sensitively. So there's a lot of contradictions in the policy, I think.
In fact,
Or lack of
butchery
one.
would be an option, really, isn't it? If you're
a lot of trees get discovered as being dead all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Or diseased all of a sudden, and they have to be taken down, and they're over and above what was already allocated for being taken away.
And would a tree officer be able to stop work?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the tree officer would be able to identify things that can and should be taken away. Would do so on the basis that it would be the least preferred option, and would also have a better understanding of the trees and the surrounding vegetation as regards to the biodiversity health of an area, which I don't think is sufficiently taken into account now at the moment.
Oh, it's quite amazing, really. I mean, when you think, would they be replanting trees then?
Yeah, they are, and the trees they're planting are semi-mature and they're native species. I mean, some of the trees taken away would have been sycamore, for instance, and well, I like sycamore myself. It's not a native tree species either,
Right.
So there are contradictions on an ongoing basis, but I think it was removing the vegetation, which which would have been home to a lot of wildlife. I think that's the most shocking nature of the work that's been done so far.
Desperate stuff. Let's go to the papers, Dan, if that's okay.
Sure.
Will you be putting the workers, or will the people responsible go before the council, or be accountable for what's happened?
No, because I mean it's what they were contracted to do. Operations is a matter of officials. As a public representative, you react. You don't get to decide beforehand. You're told the general nature of the work, but you don't get to supervise the work as it's happening. You just have to hope that it's done to a particular standard, and I don't think it was this time, unfortunately.
No. Maybe rethink the timber, giving them the timber sort of.
I think those kind of clauses in contracts have to be brought in, and someone was suggesting to me that it would be a source of fuel for people who are living in field poverty. So that maybe there are better ways of doing these things. There certainly are.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a very good point. Irish Examiner, period of days before AstraZeneca jab resumes after.
Yeah, the European Medicines Agency has given the all clear. It was a very low risk. It's now been confirmed as being a risk that can be lived with. And I'm not too sure why it can't be used tomorrow. We already have a qualification that it can't be used for the over 70s. And most of our vaccination program now is for those 70 and over. We've done the healthcare workers, and I think those who will be coming into the category for using AstraZeneca, it'll probably take a few days to get those lists up and running again, but at least it can be used. I'm looking forward to, insofar as you can look forward to these things, to the Johnson & Johnson, the single dose being available. And it looks like that'll be towards the end of April, I'd imagine, early May.
Right. And why did they pause it here in Ireland?
Well, there were a number of cases in Austria and in Denmark, but particularly in Norway, there were 4 cases of people under 50 in Norway within a 12-hour period, blood clotting.
I mean, it paused. It was one of 13 countries that paused it, but why was it one of those 13? Why
was Ireland?
Why the excessive caution?
Well, it's liability, I think. It exists on 2 levels. There are national agencies and there's the European agency, and it looks like that when there was the slightest of threats, that national agencies in 13 countries decided that we want to get this double checked by the European agency. So now, if anything does go wrong subsequently, that's where the liability will lie, I suspect.
Yeah, I see. We were saying Luke O'Neill is editing tonight's primetime on RTE. you were suggesting he might sing our Eurovision entry next year.
He seems to be very prominent in the media and on all the media channels. He's on News Talk as much as he's on RTE, but I'm not too sure if he gets an appearance fee. But if he is, he'd be doing very well.
Yeah, I think he's done pretty well this year already. I think his company sold out for 30 million. He was a supporter. I mean, he was saying that there shouldn't be a pause, that AstraZeneca is fine. But there
sorry.
No, please.
No, the ratios are quite small. They're quite small. They're smaller than the natural level of clotting that would be occurring in that number of people in any case.
Yeah.
So it was excessively cautioned.
He's also tonight. They seem to be turning their attention onto China and blaming. The blame seems to be firmly put on China now, in terms of what Luke O'Neill is saying and who are kind of intimating as well.
Well, I haven't seen the program. There was a WHO delegation. They were there a number of weeks ago. They didn't seem to make much progress, and they didn't seem to come up with any conclusions.
But they were told to leave as well, weren't they? Yes, I think
they weren't told to leave. No, they did, but certainly for the first number of days, maybe couple of weeks, they weren't particularly cooperated with either, and they didn't seem to be given access to the information they needed to make these definitive statements. Well, we do know that it originated geographically there, and we do know there was a transference from animals to humans, but we don't know what the link is other than that.
Yeah, but they're sort of moving away from the bat thing and looking at the sort of a lab accident of this tonight. Apparently, I mean, I'm just going by the Twitter feed on prime time.
Yeah,
but maybe anyway, that's for another day. Is there anything else on the examiner cover that?
Well, there's a story about cows who were kept inside being very unhappy with life, but I don't think that should surprise anyone.
The care home resident gets.
Yes, I saw that. That's also on the Echo. It's a curious headline in the sense that it gives the indication that someone was just given out to or name called or whatever. I mean, it seems quite a serious case of psychological abuse. It was someone who's a mental health care patient who was harangued by the care staff of a particular care home in terms of taking their medicine, and the altercation seems to have been quite vicious. It was verbal, but it was still quite vicious, of a person who was obviously very sensitive in their disposition, and who this kind of being confronted like this may have made the life ever more difficult for them. I'm not too sure whether that's over the top for the type of behavior that was being described.
No.
Someone who was entitled to care who wasn't getting it and was getting the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the impression that the headline so gives is that sort of like one of those, compo crazy, but it's not.
Exactly.
You're right. It's a number of incidents, and show Kaz not amused by the. Yeah, well, I mean, none of us are.
I mean, they could have said humans, and it would have had the same result.
The Echo, AstraZeneca, no risk. The protest against gender-based violence. This was.
Yeah, well, I suppose it looks like it was kind of socially distanced and stuff like that. There was a similar one in Dublin the day before.
Yeah.
I was asked to speak on the Newark tonight about something in my own local area around the Loch, which is in a popular amenity area, and It wasn't like Herbert Park in Dublin yesterday, but just in terms of people enjoying a good day's weather on a bank holiday, there was an awful lot of people in the one place at the one time. Yeah, so
you're right.
And the irony is Cork is doing very well in terms of numbers. That if there's an argument of an alternative national strategy, you could open up Cork and Kerry. The numbers are very, very low here.
You're an Irish speaker, Dan, are you?
I'm not a very good one. And I was born in the States, I've told you that before, but my dad was a native speaker. He came from Arranmore Island in Donegal. Although Donegal Irish I still consider to be a foreign language. My mother, she's from Cork, but she would have done her leaving cert in Oscalia, but in the States it was never spoken to us at home, and I came here and I just did it past level all the way through school myself. I have a good understanding of it. I can read it. I can follow conversations, but I lack the confidence, like most people, of speaking it clearly, core raw conversation myself, because I get hung up on prepositions. I get hung up on tenses, plurals, that type of thing.
And do you get sort of like, do you sound kind of broken, like somebody sort of spoken
No, in fairness to them, it's not exactly live. We work out what I want to say. I put my own construction on it, and I present it that way. But it often takes me 2 or 3 times to get the sentence together, But it's about trying. It's about trying.
Right. And are there complaints like, Dan, that's obviously you've said something?
No, not particularly. I mean,
it's grateful that
I'm 50 years in Ireland, at this stage, and people still talk about my American accent. Yes,
really. Yeah. It's funny. Your Cork accent doesn't get stronger when you're in Cork. My mother is as soon as she's.
Yeah, but my Cork accent seems to get stronger when I'm out of Cork. When I'm in Dublin, it's quite strong, apparently.
I noticed when you got a little bit upset, your Cork accent comes out very strongly.
Yeah, well, me and Micheál Martin, I think. Yes.
Yeah, totally. The Daily Telegraph, the jab is safe. The thing that isn't safe is catching COVID. Yeah.
Well, there's a logic to that, but the British program is not going swimmingly either. I mean, there is the threat about Europeans withholding some level of supply, but there seems to be a bigger threat of supply itself from India at the moment.
Yeah.
But the whole idea of the vaccines being created half a world away for the benefit of us and the developed world is another debate itself, I think.
Yeah. Well, globalism, it's just,
Indeed.
This is the downside. Or PM backs jab as row grows over boasts about rollout. Okay.
Yeah, well, they are getting a benefit about the vaccine program in the UK, the Tory government in particular. But there'll come a time when we'll look at the totality of it, and the last 12 months, it's still one of the worst death rates in the world per 100,000 population, and it's still the country that's suffered the worst economic consequences. Although they can argue about Brexit in relation to that too.
Dan, is that Nicola Sturgeon thing a resignable offence?
It's getting a bit more uncomfortable for her. Apparently, the committee that was looking into it, a parliamentary committee, has broken down 5-4. I don't know whether that's on party lines or not.
Right.
The Scottish Nationalists don't have a majority at the moment in the Scottish Parliament, but they do, ironically enough, with the Scottish Greens. So it could be the case that broke down under party lines, but it looks like she's going to have a vote of confidence next Tuesday. So she'll need all her oratorical skills, I think, to get herself over that one. And they weren't very precise in their criticism either. They said there was a possibility she broke the code.
Yeah, so there's wiggle room there for.
There is.
But, and she is very popular in Scotland, isn't she? I mean, they do like.
She is, and it's been used, I think, as a bit of a stick to dampen down the nationalist surge, and it succeeded to a certain extent. But she's still, if she hangs on, she'll certainly be re-elected, and she'll probably have an extended majority, I think. And I don't think the national thing is going to go away. It's in May, and it'll probably be physical by the way things are going. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Just the Sturgeon in peril. Yeah. I think you're right. I'm not sure if she's going to. Well, who could take her? Well, I'm sure.
Well, this is it. I mean, they're still really hoping that it'll show a collapse. I mean, there's been some slippage. I mean, the most recent poll I've seen is that from being dominant in an election, they'd come back with a majority of 1 or something, which is still better than where they are now. So.
Cameron lobbied for access to COVID.
Yeah, this is interesting because if anything, it'll affect the Tories. It's this sleeves thing which seems to be hitting them big time, and there are a few sub chapters in the COVID story in terms of PPE and
in terms of possibly, there's so much money went out.
Oh, there is, yeah, and the testing and trace system in the UK is always also up for question. They appointed they have a habit of saying czar for these type of things,
Yeah.
but the woman they appointed is someone who's got very close Tory connections, and the people who have benefited from the contracts are people who have close contacts to her. So
Yeah.
the fact that Cameron seems to be getting involved now seems to be
Well,
relying the fact that corruption could be very much at the heart of it all.
yeah, it's funny. I hadn't heard from him for a while, and then of course he'll come up in some.
No, and he probably didn't want to be referred to at all because history hasn't been and it won't be kind to him, I don't think. So.
No. Well, you would regard him as a total villain of history, wouldn't you?
No. Well, I think it's not only the Brexit thing. Like, it's people tend to forget that Libya was him and Sarkozy, trying to look for a foreign adventure of their own, and I think. Yeah, well, she was Secretary of State, but in terms of the pushing, I think it was definitely France and Britain who were doing most of the dirty work there.
Truly gross, isn't it? I mean,
there's a story there about Gaddafi almost bringing things around at the time, but I'm of the belief they never wanted Gaddafi to live because he must have known so much about who was responsible for what, So.
Well, you remember Hillary Clinton? We came, we saw, we killed. Rather famous. To camera. Greatness awaits. You're not a Gigi's man, Dan.
Well, I must admit, I've been following it. I mean, up until today. Well, it was 11 Irish wins out of 14 in the first 2 days, I noticed. And even one of the English ones was John Joe O'Neill. Yes. But one of Willie Mullins's horses didn't win today, and that was possibly a shock horror. There's Rachel Blackmore that's doing very well as a jockey, being the first one to win particular races.
But John Joe O'Neill, he's not riding still, is he?
Oh, no, he's a trainer. He's a trainer at this stage. Okay. Oh, he must be close to 70 at this stage. He must.
Yeah, but they do last long. I mean, Piggott.
They do. I mean, I remember Lester Piggott in his mid-50s and things like that, and Frankie Dettori, I think, is about 50, 51 now or something like that.
There was an American guy who came over to Britain. Willie Shoemaker? No, Shoemaker.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right. Willie Shoemaker. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And there's another guy called Steve Connor or something. Anyway, so and racing seems to have survived the Elliott scandal.
Well, Tiger Roll won, which means Gordy and Elliott won. It seems to be a sport that you can't lose in, except for the punters.
Yeah, this is remember this. Daily Star, Union academic sacked for using too many aggressive question marks in his texts.
Yeah, probably not, but
possibly not. But that can be annoying, the kind of people tweeting caps and whatever.
Well, I'd be more worried if he was giving out to people about using the colon and the semicolon too much or incorrectly or something like
that. Indeed, yeah, that's the Oxford comma, is it?
Oh, I'm fond of that myself, I must admit. It makes sense to take a breath halfway through a sentence, I think.
Yeah, you do. Sadly, you don't have a column today, so...
No, I'll catch up next week. The bank holiday and stuff like that, it's...
of course.
And Doyle and Shannon not sitting this week. It's there is the Leo shenanigans, but
yeah. Actually, just briefly, the Neil Martin's visit to Washington.
The virtual visit. In any case, they made a big thing about the fact that it was the meeting itself lasted for 80 minutes rather than the usual 45. I looked at the public events; they seemed warm enough. The right things were said. There was no particular mispronunciation of names or words or anything like that. Joe Biden, for the third or fourth time, used a Hope or History line from Seamus Heaney.
Yeah. We got to talk about that line. God.
He did write other poetry. As just
yeah.
Maybe we can suggest Paddy Kavanagh to him or something like that.
Well, this is it. Yeah. The Leo and the criminal investigation again in terms of like the Nicola Sturgeon thing. I mean, is it as serious as?
I don't think it is. I don't think it is. No, if charges were being pressed, I don't see where the official secret acts come in because no, maybe that's something that needs to be constitutionally checked. But we have a problem with secrecy in this country in any case, in that far too much documentation is described as secret and is hidden as secret when it doesn't have to be. You look at the Scandinavian countries; they're far more open about those type of things. And yeah, I'm hard pushed to see where there was a commercial or a personal or a political advantage in any of this. And I think it's just trying to say that yeah, someone was caught out and we have to make the most of it. I noticed Vincent Brown, of all people, was having a go at Sinn Féin about Jerry Adams being questioned in relation to Jim McConville and like. So any given situation could be portrayed in such a way that it's worse than it actually is. And
I have to say that was the most whataboutery tweet.
Yeah, well, Vincent surprises everyone at the best of times. You know,
but the leaking is part of, it's part of it. I mean,
I suppose this is what I find hard about it in the sense that, and I think the media are holding off to a certain extent because if there wasn't leaking between politics, could an Irish media exist? Because most of the stories are constructed on the basis of we got information you don't have, and we're breaking it before anyone else. And there's a kind of, that kind of double standard is throughout the media in Irish politics. This is it.
Don't touch
and I suppose you could make a case that in relation to this particular leak to the competitor trade union to the Irish Medical Organization, which itself folded for being such a failure, despite having access, this supposed brilliant access. Where was the benefit?
Yeah, it's all a bit sad. But I mean, in terms of the story itself, it is an action story, and Irish Times RT kind of ignored it till it became, unavoidable.
Yeah, well, the Gardaí have an obligation to act on complaints. As they could have chosen to treat it as frivolous, but they've decided there is a basis for investigation. But they haven't approached him. They haven't questioned him. They have statements from Simon Harris. They have statements from a whistleblower in the Department of Health, and we don't have the access to what's contained in those statements or what they might insinuate in terms of wider pictures and stuff like that. So if the investigation shows that something needs to be prosecuted, then things are at a different level then.
Yeah. And credit to where it's you, Village Magazine, who've been pursuing this quite diligently, I think, quite fervently. Dan, it's great to see you, and I'm glad you're feeling better. Hopefully, I'll have a column next week, and hopefully we'll see you next week again.
Sure, look forward to that.
Thank you very much. Okay.
See you then, Jeff.